The new weapon, the Stradavar, it says it's a high capacity, high damage enforcer. Its magazine is 65, but it's got a fire rate of 10, which is pretty high. Its crit's not that good at 10% with only a 2 multiplier, and its status is only 5%, so don't see how this is high damage considering it's got a total of like 20 damage. The blueprint for it is actually in the marketplace for 20,000 credits. It needs 2 argon crystals, haha, nice, 3 neural sensors, 8,000 polymer bundles, 15,000 ferrite, 20,000 credits to actually build it. That's actually not that bad on the whole requirements to actually build this thing. Honestly, I don't know what to compare it to. For some reason I'm getting some major lag as well, but that's a local thing, that's nothing to do with the game. Because I don't know what it's like. It's, from what I've seen, it's basically like a Tommy gun, which would be an automatic firing weapon, and comparing it to the Soma just doesn't really seem fair. So, it's like, I don't know which one to compare it to, because I haven't fired the damn thing yet. The Carrack would be the closest thing I can really think of, but it's about the same damage numbers. It works kind of similarly with the auto fire, but it has a higher fire rate. If it works anything like the Carrack, this thing is going to be amazing. Plus, it comes with 2 Vs, so instantly, without putting a former in this, the build possibilities are actually quite endless. Using this thing, I've learned a few things. Like, if you see in the bottom right there, it says auto, which literally is automatic fire mode. But if you push the middle mouse button, it turns it into single fire, or semi-automatic, however you want to put it. Which is great, because it will save the ammo, and it actually seems to do it. I don't want to say it does more damage, but it makes it a lot more accurate. Unless, of course, you fit heavy caliber, in which case you'll never hit what you actually aim for. Ever. At all. Split chamber doesn't really help much. That whole feature was kind of fun at first. After using it for a while, I found myself just leaving this in full auto mode because there was no like prefixed way to, you know, stick it in semi and just leave it. So every time you started a mission, you were having to swap over to it, and after a while it was just like, well, I'll just use it like an auto rifle instead, because it just made it easier. And to be honest, you can take people out a little bit easier in auto mode, because you pull the trigger once and it'll fire 1 or 2 rounds. Instead of just 1, you might get a second one off instead, and that second one might finish them off. So it kind of worked a little bit better. Sometimes in some situations, not all the time. It basically just came down to having to switch it all the time was becoming a nuisance more than anything else. But it was still nice to have that feature, because on certain missions, when you're trying to kill them at a bit of a longer range, an auto weapon just doesn't work as well. So it's still a nice feature. I just found myself leaving it in auto after I'd used it for a while. The build I put on this was pretty crap. I basically threw serration, split chamber, heavy caliber, threw piercing caliber on to take the puncture to 269.6 because I didn't know what else to put on there. Then I threw high voltage and magnum force on for 294.1 corrosive. Primed fast hands was just to increase the reload speed because I threw spring loaded chamber on here, which honestly, I have no idea where that mod came from. I think it was dropped by one of the Stalker's minion things from the previous event. And on reload, 75% fire rate when aiming for 9 seconds using the spring-loaded chamber mod. Hence, primed fast hand, so I could reload quicker, even though it's only 5% higher with the primed one. So really fast hands would have worked just as well. But even despite the fact the build I have on this is no questionable on this one at all, and I know that makes no sense, but either way, it sucks. That is just what I happen to have in this, and yeah, it's actually not a bad little weapon. I do like my auto primaries because, well, I use the Bratton Prime all the time, and seeing as this compared to the Carrack was actually a huge improvement, plus that whole single fire thing to it kind of had me very intrigued at this from the minute it kind of appeared. But it still suffers the same problem that the Carrack suffers. The Carrack's problem is it does have 15... No, wait. I'm thinking of the Carrack Wraith there. The normal Carrack has 7.5% status. This only has 5. If it had a little bit more crit, it would have been a much, much better weapon, to be honest. Honestly, though, the biggest downside to this weapon has to be the fact that it costs 2 Orgon Crystals, because it's actually a pretty decent primary. That feature to change it would be great on some other primaries, because it adds a bit of range to it. If you dumped Heavy Caliber completely, left it in semi-auto, this would be don't want to say it would be a competitor for the Latron, but it would be goddamn close, and it's still a pretty decent weapon. I did find it kind of puttering out though once the enemies got to like an even level 50 enemies were kind of a challenge for this over, say, the Bratton Prime. I've used that against level 100 enemies semi-effectively. This thing, I did the first sortie yesterday. Oh, no, they're like level 50 to 60 and it worked. It still took them out, but compared to some of the other primaries out there, again, I keep wanting to jump back to the Bratton Prime, but I have formatted that thing 8 times, so it's not really a fair comparison. Compared to the Carrack, it was kind of on the same thing, and it suffers when it gets to like level 45 because it just doesn't have crit. The status on it doesn't really go up that much. With those 2 status mods on there, it only took the status of this thing up to 19.9%, so it's not a status build, it's not really a crit weapon, it's not a status weapon, it's good, but it could have been better.